Most people think they're working hard, but they're lying to themselves. They confuse being busy with being productive, staying late with staying focused, trying with achieving. You want to know the difference between someone earning $50,000 0 cents and someone earning $500,000 0 cents? It's not talent, education, or connections. It's the willingness to push themselves when nobody's watching, when nobody cares, when nobody would even know the difference. The person making 10 times more isn't 10 times smarter. They're 10 times more disciplined about doing what others won't do. Let me ask you something that might change everything for you today. When was the last time you pushed yourself so hard that you surprised yourself? When was the last time you worked on something until you could look in the mirror and say, I gave that everything I had? If you're struggling to answer that question, then this message is exactly what you need to hear. See, here's what I've learned after all these years of studying success and working with thousands of people. Most folks are living way below what they're capable of. Way below. They've got all this potential locked up inside them, but they're waiting for something. They're waiting for the right time, the right opportunity, the right feeling, the right circumstances. Meanwhile, life is passing them by and their dreams are getting dustier by the day. You know what separates the people who make it from those who don't? It's not talent. It's not luck. It's not even opportunity. It's the willingness to push themselves when nobody else is watching. It's the ability to create their own pressure instead of waiting for the world to pressure them into action. I remember when I first started speaking, I was terrible. I mean, really terrible. People would fall asleep in my seminars. Some would even walk out. But I made a decision that changed my life. I decided I was going to push myself to get better whether I felt like it or not. I studied every great speaker I could find. I practiced in front of mirrors, in empty rooms, anywhere I could. I pushed myself until my skills started catching up with my ambitions. That's the thing about results. They don't care about your excuses. They don't care about your circumstances. They don't care about your past or your fears or your doubts. Results only care about one thing, what you actually do. And here's the truth that most people don't want to face. If you're not getting the results you want, it's because you're not pushing yourself hard enough to deserve them. Now, I know that might sound harsh, but stick with me. I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm trying to wake you up. Because once you understand this principle, once you really get it deep in your bones, everything changes. Your whole relationship with work changes. See, most people think motivation comes first, then action. They think they need to feel motivated before they can push themselves, but that's backwards. That's why they stay stuck. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. When you push yourself to do something, even when you don't feel like it, that's when you start building the kind of character that creates lasting results. I've watched people wait their whole lives for motivation to strike. They're waiting for inspiration. They're waiting for passion. They're waiting for the perfect moment when everything aligns and they feel ready to give their all. But here's what I've learned. That moment rarely comes. And even when it does, it doesn't last long enough to create the kind of sustained effort that builds something meaningful. The people who achieve extraordinary things don't wait for extraordinary feelings. They create extraordinary habits. They push themselves on the ordinary days, the boring days, the days when they don't feel like it. That's where the magic happens. That's where character is built. Let me tell you about a young man I met years ago. He was working a minimum wage job, living paycheck to paycheck, dreaming of starting his own business. But every time I saw him, he had a new excuse for why he couldn't get started. First it was money, then it was time, then it was knowledge, then it was connections. There was always something he was waiting for. One day I asked him, what if you stopped waiting and started pushing yourself to do whatever you can do right now, today, with what you have? He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, but I'm not ready yet. I said, nobody ever feels ready. Ready is not a feeling. Ready is a decision. That conversation changed him. He stopped waiting for perfect conditions and started pushing himself to take imperfect action. He started his business from his kitchen table with $200, 0 cents, and a borrowed laptop. Was it hard? Absolutely. Did he want to quit 100 times? You bet. But he kept pushing himself one small step at a time. Today, that young man owns a company with over 50 employees. He didn't wait until he felt ready. He didn't wait until conditions were perfect. He pushed himself until his results started speaking louder than his excuses. That's what happens when you make the decision to push yourself. You stop being a victim of circumstances and start being the creator of your own reality. You stop waiting for life to happen to you and start making life happen for you. But here's what most people don't understand about pushing yourself. It's not about working yourself to death. It's not about burning out or sacrificing your health or your relationships. It's about consistent pressure. It's about showing up every day and doing a little more than you did yesterday. It's about stretching yourself just beyond your comfort zone again and again until what used to be hard becomes easy. Think about it this way. If you wanted to get physically stronger, you wouldn't wait until you felt like lifting weights. You'd go to the gym and push your muscles just a little beyond what they're comfortable with. That's how they grow. That's how they get stronger. Your character works the same way. Your skills work the same way. Your results work the same way. Every time you push yourself to do something that's a little harder than what you did yesterday, you're building strength. You're building capacity. You're building the kind of person who deserves the results they want. And here's the beautiful thing about this process. The more you push yourself, the more you realize you're capable of. The more you discover that your limits were mostly in your mind. The more you understand that you've been settling for far less than what you could achieve. I've seen people who thought they were average discover they were extraordinary. I've seen people who thought they were stuck realize they had the power to change everything. But it all started with the decision to push themselves beyond what felt comfortable, beyond what felt safe, beyond what felt easy. See, comfortable is the enemy of great. Easy is the enemy of excellent. When you're comfortable, you're not growing. When things are easy, you're not challenging yourself enough to develop the skills and character you need for the next level. The market rewards value. Life rewards contribution. Success rewards those who push themselves to become worth more. If you want more, you have to become more. If you want different results, you have to become a different person. And that transformation only happens when you push yourself beyond who you are today. This isn't about perfection. This isn't about never making mistakes or never having bad days. This is about commitment. This is about deciding that you're going to push yourself toward your goals whether you feel like it or not, whether it's convenient or not, whether anyone else believes in you or not. Because here's what I've learned after all these years. Results don't lie. You can make excuses. You can blame circumstances. You can point fingers at other people or the economy or your upbringing or whatever else you want to blame. But results tell the truth about how much you've really pushed yourself. If your bank account isn't where you want it to be, that's a result. If your relationships aren't what you want them to be, that's a result. If your health isn't what you want it to be, that's a result. If your skills aren't where you want them to be, that's a result. And results don't lie. The good news is that you have the power to change your results. You have the power to push yourself in a new direction. You have the power to create the kind of consistent pressure on yourself that leads to breakthrough performance. But it starts with a decision. It starts with looking in the mirror and saying, I'm going to push myself until my results start speaking for me. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, not when you feel motivated. Today, right now, with what you have, where you are. That decision, that commitment to push yourself beyond your current limits, that's where everything begins to change. Now that you understand the importance of pushing yourself, let's talk about the difference between external pressure and internal pressure. This distinction will determine whether you build lasting success or just temporary results. External pressure comes from other people. Your boss pressures you to meet deadlines. Your spouse pressures you to be more responsible. Your parents pressure you to succeed. The bank pressures you to pay your bills. Society pressures you to conform. This kind of pressure can get you moving, but it has a fatal flaw. It only works as long as someone else is watching. Think about it. How many people do you know who work hard at their job but neglect their personal development? They perform when the boss is around, but the moment nobody's looking, they slack off. They meet external expectations but ignore their internal potential. That's external pressure in action. Internal pressure is completely different. Internal pressure comes from who you want to become. It comes from your values, your vision, your commitment to excellence. Internal pressure doesn't need supervision. It doesn't need reminders. It doesn't need threats or consequences from other people. It's self-generating, self-sustaining, self-directed. When you develop the ability to create internal pressure, you become unstoppable. You become someone who pushes themselves whether anyone else cares or not. You become someone who maintains high standards whether anyone else notices or not. You become someone who keeps growing whether anyone else encourages you or not. This is what separates entrepreneurs from employees, leaders from followers, achievers from dreamers. Achievers have learned to create their own pressure. They don't wait for external circumstances to force them into action. They generate their own urgency, their own standards, their own accountability. I learned this lesson early in my career when I was working for someone else. I noticed that some people only worked hard when the boss was around. The moment he left, they would relax, chat, take longer breaks. But there were a few people who maintained the same intensity whether the boss was there or not. Those were the people who got promoted. Those were the people who eventually started their own businesses. Those were the people who understood internal pressure. The beautiful thing about internal pressure is that it compounds. Every time you push yourself without external force, you build character. Every time you maintain high standards without supervision, you build integrity. Every time you choose discipline over convenience, you build strength. This compound effect is what creates extraordinary results over time. Most people think success is about big moments, dramatic breakthroughs, sudden opportunities. But real success is built through thousands of small decisions to push yourself when nobody else would even know the difference. Let me tell you about the compound effect in practical terms. If you read just 10 pages of a good book every day, that's 3,650 pages a year. That's about 12 full books. Most people don't read 12 books in 5 years. But you could read 12 books every single year just by creating internal pressure to read 10 pages daily. If you make just one extra sales call every day, that's 250 extra calls per year. If your closing rate is 10%, that's 25 extra sales annually, just from pushing yourself to do one more call than everyone else expects. If you save just $5 every day, that's $1,825, 0 cents per year. In 10 years, with compound interest, that could become over $25,000, 0 cents. All from creating internal pressure to save $5 daily. That's the power of internal pressure applied consistently over time. Small actions repeated daily create massive results. But here's the key. Nobody else can create this pressure for you. Your boss can't make you read those extra pages. Your spouse can't make you make those extra calls. Your parents can't make you save those extra dollars. This pressure has to come from within. This is why so many people struggle with comfort zones. A comfort zone isn't really about comfort. It's about the absence of pressure. When you're in your comfort zone, you're not pushing yourself, you're not growing, you're not building the kind of character and capability that creates better results. But here's what most people don't understand about comfort zones. They become prisons. What starts as comfort eventually becomes limitation. What starts as easy eventually becomes mediocre. What starts as safe eventually becomes stagnant. The people who achieve extraordinary things have learned to be comfortable with discomfort. They've learned to create pressure on themselves to grow, to improve, to push beyond their current limitations. They understand that growth and comfort cannot coexist. I remember meeting a successful businessman who told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Jim, I've learned that you're either growing or you're dying. There's no standing still in life. If you're not pushing yourself forward, life is pushing you backward." That's profound when you think about it. The world is constantly changing. Technology is advancing. Competition is increasing. Skills are evolving. If you're not pushing yourself to keep up, to stay ahead, to continue growing, then relatively speaking, you're falling behind. This is why internal pressure is so crucial. External circumstances will always be changing. The economy will go up and down. Industries will evolve. Technology will disrupt entire professions. But if you've developed the ability to create internal pressure to push yourself, regardless of external conditions, then you can adapt to anything. Think about the most successful people you know. They all have this quality. They push themselves whether times are good or bad. They maintain high standards whether they're winning or losing. They keep growing whether they're being praised or criticized. That's internal pressure at work. Now let me share something important about building this internal pressure. It's not about being hard on yourself. It's not about self-criticism or negative self-talk. It's not about punishment or guilt. That's not sustainable, and it's not healthy. Real internal pressure comes from love. Love for your potential, love for your future, love for the person you could become. When you truly care about your growth, when you're genuinely excited about your possibilities, then pushing yourself doesn't feel like work. It feels like investment. Think about parents with their children. Good parents create pressure on their kids to do homework, to practice their instruments, to develop good habits. But this pressure comes from love. It comes from wanting the best for their children. It comes from seeing their potential and wanting to help them reach it. You need to become that kind of parent to yourself. You need to create loving pressure on yourself to reach your potential. You need to see your possibilities clearly enough that you're willing to push yourself to achieve them. This means setting standards for yourself that are higher than what others expect. This means maintaining discipline even when it's inconvenient. This means choosing long-term growth over short-term comfort. This means becoming someone who demands excellence from themselves, not because they have to, but because they want to. Here's what happens when you master internal pressure. You develop what I call success momentum. Every time you push yourself and follow through, you build confidence in your ability to push yourself again. Every time you maintain high standards, you reinforce the identity of someone who has high standards. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you strengthen your growth mindset. This momentum becomes self-reinforcing. The more you push yourself, the easier it becomes to push yourself. The more you achieve through self-discipline, the more motivated you become to continue being self-disciplined. The more results you create through internal pressure, the more convinced you become that internal pressure works. But it starts with a decision. A decision to stop waiting for external pressure and start creating internal pressure. A decision to stop being a victim of circumstances and start being the director of your own growth. A decision to push yourself not because you have to, but because you choose to. This decision changes everything. It changes how you approach your work. It changes how you spend your free time. It changes how you respond to setbacks. It changes how you think about your potential. It changes who you become. And when you change who you are, you change what you can achieve. When you become someone who consistently creates internal pressure to grow and improve, you become someone who consistently creates better results. That's the philosophy of self-pressure in action. Now that you understand the philosophy of self-pressure, let's get practical. Let's talk about exactly how to push yourself in ways that create real, measurable results. Because philosophy without practice is just wishful thinking. The first thing you need to understand is that pushing yourself isn't about dramatic gestures or heroic efforts that last a week. It's about daily disciplines. It's about small, consistent actions that seem insignificant in the moment, but become extraordinary over time. Most people think about success backwards. They think they need to make big changes to get big results, but that's not how it works. Big results come from small actions repeated consistently over long periods of time. The question isn't whether you can push yourself for one day or 1 week. The question is whether you can push yourself every day for the next 5 years. Let me give you a practical example. If you want to become an expert in your field, you don't need to study for 12 hours today. You need to study for 1 hour every day for the next 3 years. If you want to get in the best shape of your life, you don't need to work out for 4 hours today. You need to exercise for 30 minutes every day for the next 2 years. This is what I call the discipline of daily increment. Every day you push yourself just a little beyond what you did yesterday. Not dramatically beyond, not impossibly beyond, just measurably beyond. Here's how this works in practice. If you're in sales and you made 10 calls yesterday, push yourself to make 11 today. If you read 5 pages yesterday, read 6 today. If you saved $10 yesterday, save 11 today. It's not about the specific numbers. It's about the habit of incremental improvement. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Jim, that doesn't seem like much. 1 extra call, 1 extra page, 1 extra dollar. How is that going to change my life? Let me tell you exactly how it changes your life. First, it builds the most valuable skill you can develop, the ability to do what you say you're going to do. Every time you push yourself to do just a little more than yesterday, you're proving to yourself that you can be trusted. You're building confidence in your own word. You're becoming someone who follows through. Second, it creates momentum. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. When you're moving forward, even slowly, it becomes easier to keep moving forward. When you're improving, even incrementally, it becomes easier to keep improving. Success breeds success, but only if you start somewhere. Third, it compounds over time. That 1 extra sales call per day becomes 250 extra calls per year. Those extra calls become extra sales. Those extra sales become extra income. That extra income becomes extra opportunity. Before you know it, that tiny daily discipline has transformed your entire career. But here's the key to making this work. You have to measure it. You cannot improve what you do not measure. If you want to push yourself effectively, you need to know exactly where you are right now and exactly where you're going. This means tracking your key activities every single day. Not just when you feel like it, not just when you remember, every single day. I don't care if you use a notebook, a spreadsheet, an app, or marks on your wall. What matters is that you measure your most important activities consistently. Let me tell you about a young woman I mentored years ago. She was a real estate agent who was struggling to make ends meet. She was working hard, or at least she thought she was, but her results weren't showing it. When I asked her how many calls she made each day, she said a lot. When I asked her how many properties she showed each week, she said several. When I asked her how many follow-ups she did with past clients, she said as many as I can. Do you see the problem? She had no specific measurements. She was trying to push herself, but she had no way to know if she was actually improving or just staying busy. I gave her a simple challenge. For the next 30 days, she had to track exactly how many calls she made, exactly how many appointments she set, exactly how many properties she showed, and exactly how many follow-ups she completed every single day. The first thing that happened was shocking to her. She discovered that her a lot was actually very little. Her several was actually hardly any. Her as many as I can was actually almost none. The measurement revealed the truth about her effort. But here's what happened next. Once she could see her actual numbers, she could push herself to improve them. She started with small increments. If she made 15 calls on Monday, she pushed herself to make 16 on Tuesday. If she showed 2 properties this week, she pushed herself to show 3 next week. Within 6 months, her income had doubled. Within a year, she was in the top 10% of agents in her office. Within 2 years, she had started her own real estate team, all because she learned to measure her activities and push herself to improve them incrementally every day. That's the power of measurement combined with incremental pressure. It turns vague intentions into specific actions. It turns trying harder into doing more. It turns hope into strategy. Now, let me share with you the most important measurement principle I've ever learned. Don't measure outcomes first. Measure activities first. Here's why. You have complete control over your activities, but you only have influence over your outcomes. You can control how many calls you make, but you can't control how many people answer. You can control how many hours you study, but you can't control how quickly you learn. You can control how many job applications you submit, but you can't control who responds. When you focus on measuring and improving your activities, the outcomes take care of themselves. When you focus on measuring outcomes without tracking activities, you get frustrated because you're trying to control things outside your influence. So here's your practical blueprint. Choose 3 activities that, if done consistently, would dramatically improve your results. Maybe it's making a certain number of sales calls. Maybe it's reading a certain number of pages. Maybe it's exercising a certain number of minutes. Maybe it's saving a certain amount of money. Whatever activities you choose, make sure they meet 3 criteria. First, they must be completely under your control. Second, they must be easily measurable. Third, they must directly contribute to your most important goals. Once you've chosen your 3 activities, commit to tracking them every single day for the next 90 days. Not just the days you feel motivated, not just the days that are convenient, every single day. Here's how to make this work. Get a simple notebook or create a simple spreadsheet. Write down your 3 activities at the top. Every day, write down exactly how much you did of each activity. At the end of each week, look at your numbers and ask yourself, how can I push myself to do just a little more next week? The key word is little. Don't try to double your effort overnight. Don't try to go from 10 calls to 50 calls. That's not sustainable. Push yourself to go from 10 calls to 11. Then from 11 to 12, then from 12 to 13. Small increments, sustained over time, create massive improvements. But here's where most people fail. They start strong for the first week or 2, then they miss a day, then they miss another day, then they give up completely because they think they've already failed. And let me tell you something important about this process. You will miss days, you will have setbacks, you will have moments when you don't feel like pushing yourself. That's not failure. That's normal. The difference between people who succeed and people who quit is simple. People who succeed get back on track immediately. They don't wait for Monday. They don't wait for next month. They get back on track the very next day. This is what I call the 24-hour rule. If you miss a day of pushing yourself toward your goals, you have 24 hours to get back on track. Not next week. Not when you feel motivated again. 24 hours. This rule prevents small setbacks from becoming major failures. Now let me tell you about the most powerful part of this blueprint. After about 30 to 60 days of consistently tracking and incrementally improving your key activities, something magical happens. You start to see patterns. You start to understand what works and what doesn't. You start to develop what I call performance intelligence. Performance intelligence is the ability to make small adjustments that create big improvements. It's knowing which activities produce the best results. It's understanding which times of day you perform best. It's recognizing which factors help you push yourself more effectively. This intelligence only comes through consistent measurement and incremental improvement. You can't develop it by thinking about it or reading about it. You can only develop it by doing it, measuring it, and adjusting it over time. Here's what this looks like in practice. After tracking your activities for a few months, you might notice that you make better sales calls in the morning than in the afternoon, so you adjust your schedule to do more calling in the morning. You might notice that you read more effectively after exercise than before, so you adjust your routine to exercise before reading. These small adjustments, based on real data about your own performance, can dramatically increase your results without dramatically increasing your effort. That's performance intelligence in action. The beautiful thing about this blueprint is that it works for any goal, any profession, any situation, whether you want to build a business, advance your career, improve your health, strengthen your relationships, or develop new skills. The principle is the same. Choose key activities, measure them daily, push yourself to improve incrementally, track your progress, and make intelligent adjustments over time. This is how you push yourself in ways that actually create results. This is how you turn effort into achievement. This is how you build the kind of consistent performance that makes results inevitable. Now let's talk about the part nobody wants to discuss, but everyone needs to hear. The resistance, the voice in your head that tells you to quit, the feeling that makes you want to go back to your old comfortable ways. The internal force that fights against every attempt to push yourself beyond your current limits. Here's what most people don't understand about resistance. It's not a character flaw. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not evidence that you're not cut out for success. Resistance is built into your brain. It's a survival mechanism that's designed to keep you safe, to keep you from taking risks, to keep you exactly where you are. Your brain doesn't care about your dreams. Your brain doesn't care about your potential. Your brain doesn't care about your goals. Your brain has one primary job: to keep you alive. And from your brain's perspective, anything new, anything challenging, anything that pushes you beyond your current comfort zone is potentially dangerous. This is why every time you try to push yourself, you feel resistance. This is why every time you attempt to change, part of you wants to go back to the old way. This is why every time you start building new habits, your mind generates 1,000 reasons why you should stop. The people who achieve extraordinary results aren't people who don't feel resistance. They're people who feel resistance and push forward anyway. They understand that resistance is not a stop sign. It's a sign that they're moving in the right direction. Let me tell you about a period in my own life when I almost let resistance win. I was in my early 30s trying to build my speaking career, and I was failing more often than I was succeeding. Every time I got up to speak, my brain would fill with doubt. "You're not good enough," it would say. "These people are going to find out you don't know what you're talking about," it would whisper. "You should quit before you embarrass yourself further," it would suggest. The resistance was so strong that I almost gave up. I almost went back to a regular job where the expectations were lower and the risks were smaller. But then I realized something that changed everything. I realized that the resistance wasn't trying to protect me from failure. It was trying to protect me from growth. See, here's what resistance really is. It's your current self trying to prevent you from becoming your future self. It's your old identity fighting to survive. It's your existing comfort zone defending its territory. And the stronger the resistance, the bigger the growth you're attempting. This means that resistance is actually a good sign. When you feel strong resistance to pushing yourself in a certain direction, it usually means that direction holds the most potential for your growth. When you feel most tempted to quit, you're often closest to a breakthrough. But knowing this intellectually doesn't make resistance easier to handle emotionally. So let me give you some practical strategies for dealing with resistance when it shows up. First, expect it. Don't be surprised when resistance appears. Don't be discouraged when it feels strong. Resistance is part of the process. It's not a bug in the system, it's a feature. When you expect resistance, you're less likely to be derailed by it. Second, name it. When you feel that voice telling you to quit, say to yourself, that's resistance talking. When you feel that urge to go back to your old habits, say, there's the resistance again. When you name resistance, you separate it from your true self. You recognize it as a temporary mental state, not a permanent truth about your abilities. Third, use it as fuel. Every time you feel resistance and push through anyway, you build what I call resistance muscle. You prove to yourself that you're stronger than your excuses. You demonstrate that you can choose your actions regardless of your feelings. This builds confidence and character simultaneously. Fourth, focus on the next small step. Resistance often feels overwhelming because you're thinking about the entire journey instead of the next single action. Don't think about pushing yourself for the next year. Think about pushing yourself for the next hour. Don't think about all the calls you need to make this month. Think about the one call you need to make right now. Fifth, remember your why. Resistance attacks your motivation, but it can't touch your purpose. When you remember why you started pushing yourself, when you reconnect with your deeper reasons for growth, resistance loses much of its power. Now let me talk about a specific type of resistance that stops more people than any other. The resistance that comes from other people. Not everyone is going to support your decision to push yourself. Not everyone is going to understand your commitment to growth. Some people in your life might actually try to discourage you from changing. This isn't necessarily because they want to hurt you. Often it's because your growth threatens their comfort zone. When you start pushing yourself to new levels, it makes other people question their own lack of effort. When you start achieving better results, it highlights their own mediocrity. When you start becoming more disciplined, it makes their lack of discipline more obvious. So they might say things like, you're working too hard, or you're becoming obsessed, or you used to be more fun, or you're changing too much. These comments aren't really about you. They're about their own insecurity and resistance to change. Here's what you need to understand about this dynamic. You cannot let other people's limitations become your limitations. You cannot let other people's comfort zones become your prison. You cannot let other people's resistance to growth stop your own growth. This doesn't mean you should be arrogant or dismissive of people who care about you. But it does mean you need to be selective about whose opinions you allow to influence your decisions. Not everyone's opinion deserves equal weight in your life. The people whose opinions matter most are those who are already where you want to be. The people whose feedback you should value are those who have achieved what you're trying to achieve. The people whose advice you should follow are those who have successfully pushed themselves to extraordinary levels. Don't take fitness advice from people who are out of shape. Don't take financial advice from people who are broke. Don't take career advice from people who hate their jobs. Don't take relationship advice from people whose relationships are failing. And don't let people who have never pushed themselves tell you that you're pushing yourself too hard. Let me tell you about a young entrepreneur I worked with who almost let other people's resistance stop his success. He was building a business that required him to work long hours and make significant sacrifices. His family and friends kept telling him he was working too much, that he needed to slow down, that he was missing out on life. He started to doubt himself. He started to think maybe they were right. He started to ease up on his efforts. And guess what happened? His business started to struggle. His momentum slowed down. His results began to decline. One day he called me and said, Jim, maybe I was pushing myself too hard. Maybe I need to find more balance. I asked him a simple question. Are the people giving you this advice more successful than you want to be? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, no, they're not. I said, then why are you taking their advice about success? That conversation changed his perspective. He realized that he was letting people who had never built a business tell him how to build a business. He was letting people who had never pushed themselves to extraordinary levels tell him he was pushing himself too hard. He went back to his disciplined approach. He stopped apologizing for his work ethic. He stopped feeling guilty for his ambition. Within 2 years, his business was generating more income than all his critics combined. Today, some of those same people who told him to slow down are asking him for advice about how to succeed. That's what happens when you push through other people's resistance. Eventually, your results speak louder than their objections. Eventually, your success validates your approach. Eventually, they stop questioning your methods and start asking about your secrets. But you have to be willing to stand alone sometimes. You have to be willing to be misunderstood. You have to be willing to have people question your choices while you're building something great. Here's another type of resistance you need to understand, the resistance that comes from setbacks and failures. Because when you push yourself, you will fail sometimes. You will have bad days, bad weeks, maybe even bad months. You will make mistakes. You will fall short of your expectations. When this happens, resistance will tell you that failure is evidence you should quit. It will tell you that setbacks prove you're not capable. It will tell you that mistakes mean you're not cut out for this level of success. But here's the truth about failure when you're pushing yourself. It's not the opposite of success. It's part of success. Every person who has achieved something significant has failed multiple times along the way. The difference is they used failure as information, not as an excuse to quit. When you push yourself and fail, ask these questions. What can I learn from this? How can I improve next time? What would I do differently if I could do it again? These questions turn failure into education. They transform setbacks into setups for comeback. Remember, the goal isn't to push yourself without ever failing. The goal is to push yourself consistently enough that your failures become stepping stones to your success. The goal is to develop the kind of resilience that turns obstacles into opportunities and resistance into resolve. Because here's what I've learned after all these years of studying success and working with thousands of people. The people who achieve the most aren't those who face the least resistance. They're those who face resistance and keep pushing anyway. They're those who feel the fear and do it regardless. They're those who hear the doubts and choose faith instead. That's what separates champions from everyone else. Champions don't avoid resistance. They expect it, they prepare for it, and they push through it. And that's exactly what you must do if you want your results to start speaking for you. Now let me tell you about the moment that makes all the pushing, all the discipline, all the resistance worthwhile. It's the moment when your results start speaking for you. It's when your performance becomes your reputation. It's when your work begins to do the talking instead of your words. This is a special moment in anyone's success story. After months or years of pushing yourself when nobody was watching, suddenly everybody is watching. After consistently doing more than what was expected, people start expecting excellence from you. After building your skills in private, your competence becomes public knowledge. But here's what most people don't understand about this transformation. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not like flipping a switch where suddenly you go from unknown to recognized. It's more like sunrise. It happens gradually, then all at once. First, you start getting small signs that people are noticing. Maybe your boss comments on your work ethic. Maybe a client mentions your reliability. Maybe a colleague asks for your advice. These aren't dramatic moments, but they're signals that your consistent effort is beginning to create a reputation. Then the opportunities start coming. People begin to think of you when challenges arise. Your name gets mentioned in meetings when difficult projects need to be assigned. You start getting invited to participate in bigger initiatives. This is your results speaking on your behalf before you even walk into the room. Let me tell you about a young man I met who experienced this transformation. He was a mid-level manager at a manufacturing company, and for 2 years he had been pushing himself to learn everything he could about operations, efficiency, and leadership. While his colleagues were content with meeting basic expectations, he was studying industry best practices, attending seminars on his own time, and implementing small improvements in his department. For the first year, it seemed like nobody noticed. His efforts weren't acknowledged. His improvements weren't celebrated. His commitment wasn't rewarded. But he kept pushing himself because he understood that results take time to compound. In the second year, things began to shift. His department was consistently outperforming others. His team had the lowest turnover rate in the company. His processes were being adopted by other departments. Suddenly, senior management was asking him to present his methods to the entire organization. Within 6 months, he was promoted to regional manager. Within a year, he was recruited by a larger company at twice his salary. Within 2 years, he was running operations for a division of 300 employees. His results had spoken so loudly that opportunities were coming to him faster than he could evaluate them. That's what happens when you push yourself long enough and consistently enough. Your results become your marketing. Your performance becomes your promotion. Your track record becomes your ticket to bigger opportunities. But here's something crucial to understand about this phase. When your results start speaking for you, everything changes. Your relationship with work changes because now you're not just doing a job, you're building a legacy. Your confidence changes because you have proof of what you're capable of achieving. Your options change because people with proven results have more choices than people with good intentions. This is when pushing yourself becomes addictive in the best possible way. When you see how much your life improves, when you commit to excellence, when you experience the respect that comes with reliable performance, when you taste the freedom that comes with having options, you never want to go back to mediocrity. Success creates more success. Results create more results. When people know you deliver, they give you more opportunities to deliver. When they trust your work ethic, they trust you with bigger responsibilities. When they see your commitment to growth, they invest in your potential. I've watched this principle work in every field. The salesperson who consistently makes extra calls becomes the one everyone wants to partner with. The employee who consistently exceeds expectations becomes the one management invests in. The business owner who consistently delivers exceptional value becomes the one customers recommend to others. This creates what I call the momentum effect. Each success makes the next success easier. Each result makes the next result more likely. Each achievement opens doors to bigger achievements. But remember, this momentum started with the decision to push yourself when nobody was watching, when nobody was encouraging you, when nobody believed in you except you. Here's what you need to know about maintaining this momentum. When your results start speaking for you, the temptation is to relax. The temptation is to think you've made it, that you can coast on your reputation. But that's the fastest way to stop the momentum. The people who sustain long-term success understand that the same habits that created their results must be maintained to keep their results. They understand that reputation is built over years but can be destroyed in moments. They understand that yesterday's performance doesn't guarantee tomorrow's opportunities. So they keep pushing themselves. They keep raising their standards. They keep growing their capabilities. They understand that the moment you stop pushing yourself is the moment you start moving backward. As we come to the end of our time together, let me leave you with this challenge. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for encouragement from others. Start pushing yourself today, right now, with what you have, where you are. Choose 3 activities that will move you toward your most important goals. Measure them daily. Improve them incrementally. Track your progress. Push through the resistance. Stay consistent when others quit. Keep going when it gets difficult. Do this for 6 months and your results will start speaking. Do this for a year and opportunities will start coming. Do this for 5 years and you'll be amazed at who you've become and what you've achieved. The world is waiting for what you have to offer, but only if you're willing to push yourself to offer it. Your potential is waiting to be realized, but only if you're willing to push yourself to realize it. Your dreams are waiting to become reality, but only if you're willing to push yourself to make them real. The time for excuses is over. The time for waiting is finished. The time for pushing yourself until your results start speaking for you is now. What you do with this message, what you do starting today, will determine whether you look back with pride or regret. Push yourself. Your future self is counting on it. Here's the bottom line. Life doesn't get easier. You get stronger. Circumstances don't improve. You improve. The market doesn't change to accommodate you. You change to succeed in the market. Every single day you have a choice. You can push yourself toward the person you want to become, or you can drift toward the person you'll regret being. You can create the kind of pressure on yourself that builds character and capability, or you can wait for external pressure that may never come. Most people will hear this message and do nothing. They'll feel inspired for a few hours, maybe even a few days, then go back to their old patterns. They'll make excuses about why their situation is different, why these principles won't work for them, why they need to wait for better circumstances. But you're not most people. You're someone who understands that extraordinary results require extraordinary commitment. You're someone who knows that dreams without discipline are just wishes. You're someone ready to push yourself until your results start speaking for you. Starting today, no more excuses, no more waiting, no more hoping someone else will create the life you want. Take responsibility for your results. Create internal pressure to grow. Build daily disciplines that compound over time. Push through resistance when it shows up. Keep going when others quit. The choice is yours. The time is now. Push yourself until your results start speaking for you.